Welcome to the Eduonics Docker course. In this video segment, we will take a moment to introduce the course. In this introduction, we will focus on what we will learn during the course. Now, there is a term associated with Docker, and it's called the DevOps. And exactly what DevOps means will be different for different people. In this course, we will make the association between the term DevOps with the dual concepts of development and operating systems, where the ops will relate to the operating system and the dev will relate to development. And we will focus the course in that way. We will, in a part of the course, look at everything we need to get started using Docker in development, in developing applications, and then we will also focus on looking at Docker from the operating system level. We will look at the architecture of Docker containers in an operating system focus, and we will also look at very important and emerging security issues for Docker and Docker containers in production, and how we can gain an operating system understanding of Docker containers to help us work with them in production for security. In the first unit, we will develop a conceptual understanding of virtualization, hypervisors, and Linux containers. Then we will move on and look at how Docker fits in, and we will look at how you can install Docker, and we will start to work with images and containers, and we will define our first basic Docker workflow, which is where we pull an image, create, and run a container from an image. In Unit 2, we look at a more professional Docker workflow, when we use what is known as a Docker file to build Docker images, which we can run as containers, and then once we have developed our application in our container, we can push our image to an online repository for images known as Docker Hub. And then we can pull that image from the online repository to some sort of container platform in production. We will learn the Docker file syntax, how to create applications with Docker files. Then we will learn commands for working with applications running in containers from Docker files. And we will learn about the Docker cache and two very important Docker file instructions for running and maintaining applications in containers, entry point, and command. In Unit 3, we will extend our Docker workflow with what's known as provisioning. We will use the Vagrant tool for this automated provisioning, and we will see how to use Vagrant and Docker together, and how to install Vagrant so it will work correctly with Docker. Then we will learn the Vagrant file syntax for working with Docker, and we will see how you can put together applications with a Vagrant file and a Docker file. We will then move on and look at production issues. When our application is running in our production environment, there are real issues with containers, and to understand these issues, we will move on to some advanced Docker concepts. These are Linux container architecture, and we will look at beginning Linux kernel programming using Docker. This is where we are focusing now, more on the operating system side of DevOps, then the development, where the two work together, hence the term DevOps. In Unit 4, we will extend our understanding of Linux container architecture, advanced Docker concepts, and kernel programming with Docker to look at Docker security issues with an understanding of the exploits of the architecture a malicious hacker could exploit for your container running in production. We will understand Systemd, the modern Linux process manager, and we will see how Systemd controls processes, how we can manage a process with Systemd, Our container is a process in production in the production platform which runs our Docker containers. These Docker container processes will be managed by systemd. So we will use Docker to understand systemd, and once we understand systemd, Linux container architecture, and the Linux kernel as it relates to Docker, we will be well versed in Docker security issues. So let's move on now and start with the course.